Jesus, you would have been aware of the stories of Daniel, Job, Ezekiel, all of those fantastic stories in Genesis. He would have been well aware of angelic spirits. But the only time that you see angels step into Jesus's world is when they come to minister to him, when it's 40 days, 40 nights in the wilderness, after he's been tempted by Satan. They don't come to take him out of the situation. They come to strengthen him and to provide for him and to wrap around him. I believe that within Gethsemane as well, he was strengthened and he was ministered to. And he had a very clear belief in an angelic host. He said to his disciples, don't you think that I couldn't ask for a legion of angels to come and rescue me? If I wanted this to happen, they could be here. So that means he was absolutely aware of this dimension around him where the angelic host reside, and that he could bring them into being in our dimension at the click of his fingers. Beautiful traditions. I love the traditions. I love the stories around them. It's a bit like fantasy based on elements of truth, but it's now been added with names and pictures and all the rest of it. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying that it's tradition that has been embellished and built on other information. Now, it may be that it's not been embellished very much and that those are absolutely true, but there is no source of actual provenance to say that that's where that came from, other than the fact that we are aware of all of these beings.
We were talking about the history of early Christianity specifically, because that fascinates me. And now here's a name for you. Quintus Septimius Florens Tertullianus, or Tertullian. He argued that angels were inferior to humans. A fascinating fact which most people may not realise. If you look at places that we have of evidence from the first 3 centuries of Christianity, there is hardly any imagery that was ever created of angels. Certainly up until, as you say, Constantine made Christianity the state religion. Now that was either because they feared putting something out there, or they thought it would be idolatrous, trying to get people to worship something that should not be worshipped, because angels aren't worshipped. But there were early Christian sects that worship angels, and there's this argument that some early Christians, certainly in certain places, may have thought Jesus was an angel. That ended at the First Ecumenical Council in the late 4th century. Irenaeus may have refuted the fact that Jesus was an angel in the 2nd century at least. So the early Christians had this battleground of ideas. For some, Jesus was an angel.
We've got to be careful with words. Did people see Jesus as an angel, or did they see him as an angelos, a messenger?
Yes, good point.
Were they revering him as a celestial being who was just something out there, or were they saying that he was a messenger? Well, in the sense of him being a messenger, yes, he was an angelos, in the same way as John the Baptist was an angelos, in the same way as any messenger of God is an angelos. There is also an understanding, something called a theophany, and a theophany is when it's a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. And that is normally as the messenger of the Lord or the angel of the Lord. So the angel of the Lord is often seen as Christ in angelic form, i.e. in a pre-incarnate form of Christ. And so there are these truths potentially all the way out there, and certainly within the Christian tradition and the Christian faith and the early Christian faith as it sort of separated out as a small sect of Judaism. I'm sure that there were sects that believed all sorts of things, as there are today. This is one of the things that Paul in his letters was always trying to address around Gnostic teaching, hidden teaching, and Jesus was a real man. He was somebody we walked with, we ate with, we drank with, we saw him live, we saw him die, and we saw him risen in a glorious resurrected body. And he wasn't just a messenger of God, he was God in human form. And that, when you look at the opening verses, from probably around about verse 18 onwards or something of Colossians, it's talking about he is the image of the invisible God. He is God in human form. So that's far higher than just an angelic being. And I think to place Jesus as an angel actually lessens him. In Christian understanding, he is God, the second person of what's called the Trinity. He is God, the God who self-emptied himself in order to put on human form, in order to relate to us, his creation in a better way. I personally wouldn't see him as an angel in the sense of a celestial being. I would see him as an angelos in terms of a messenger, absolutely. He was a prophet, he was a messenger, but I would say you just need to walk one step further, and then you see him as God in human form.